The billionaire dropped to his knees on the cold marble floor. Gasps filled the wide hall of the mansion. Guards froze. The long chandelier above them swayed a little, as if it too was shocked. The girl stood there, small and thin, her shoes torn, her dress dusty. Her dark eyes were calm, not afraid. She looked straight at the rich man and spoke in a soft voice that somehow reached every corner of the room. "You left her," the girl said. "You left her by the bus stop when it was raining. She kept calling your name." The billionaire's face went pale. His hands shook. Slowly, he lowered himself fully, both knees touching the floor. How do you know that?" he whispered. The girl did not answer. She only stared at him, as if waiting for him to remember something he had buried deep inside. And then the old woman by the door screamed. Everything went dark in the screen of the viewer's mind, leaving one burning question behind. Who is this lost girl, and what does she know that could break a billionaire like this? Before we dive deeper into this story, kindly hit the subscribe button and stay with us till the end. Share the city you're watching from in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. 3 days earlier, the rain had not stopped all morning. The girl walked alone on the sidewalk, holding her arms around her chest to keep warm. Cars passed her without slowing down. People hurried by with umbrellas and coats, not looking at her face. Her name was Aaliyah. She was 11 years old. She had been lost for 2 days. Aaliyah did not know where she was anymore. The streets all looked the same: long roads, tall houses, loud sounds. Her stomach hurt from hunger, and her feet ached with every step. She had asked for help before. Some people ignored her. Some told her to go away. One man shouted at her and said she should not be walking alone. Only one person had shown her kindness. That person was an old woman named Mrs. Eleanor Grant. Mrs. Grant lived in a small worn house near a quiet street. Her back was bent, and her hands shook when she poured tea, but her eyes were warm. When she saw Aaliyah sitting on her porch steps, soaked and shaking, she did not ask questions right away. She gave her a towel. She gave her soup. And she listened. Aaliyah told her only part of the truth. She said she got separated from someone. She said she did not know where to go. She did not say everything. Some things felt too heavy to say out loud. Mrs. Grant nodded slowly. "Sometimes," she said, "children carry stories bigger than their bodies." That night, Aaliyah slept on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket that smelled like soap and old books. She dreamed of a woman's voice calling her name in the rain. In the morning, Mrs. Grant walked with Aaliyah to the police station. But the station was busy. The officer at the desk asked many questions. He looked tired. He wrote things down but did not promise anything. "We'll look into it," he said. "But it may take time." Time felt like a luxury Aaliyah did not have. Outside the station, Mrs. Grant sighed. "There is someone else," she said quietly. "Someone who might help faster." "Who?" Aaliyah asked. Mrs. Grant pointed down the road, toward the hills where the biggest houses stood. "The man who owns half this city," she said. "The billionaire." Aaliyah's heart beat faster. She knew that house. She had seen it before. She had seen it from far away, through tall iron gates and green lawns that looked like carpets. She had seen it in her memories, blurry but sharp at the same time. "I can't go there," Aaliyah whispered. Mrs. Grant looked at her closely. "Why not?" Aaliyah swallowed. "Because he won't want to see me." Mrs. Grant held her hand. "Child," she said gently, "sometimes the people who don't want to see us are the ones who need to." They walked for a long time. The road climbed higher. The houses grew bigger. The gates grew taller. Finally, they stood before the largest gate of all. Behind it was the mansion. It looked like a palace from a storybook. White walls, wide steps, windows that shone like mirrors. Cameras watched every move. Aaliyah's hands trembled. Before she could change her mind, Mrs. Grant pressed the bell. A sharp sound rang out. A voice came through a speaker. "State your business." Mrs. Grant lifted her chin. "A child needs help," she said. "Please." There was a long pause. Then the gate slowly opened. Inside, guards led them through the long path. Aaliyah's eyes stayed on the ground. Each step felt heavier than the last. They entered the mansion. That was when everything changed. The billionaire, Jonathan Reed, stood at the center of the hall, speaking to someone on his phone. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, his face calm and controlled. He turned when he heard footsteps. His eyes landed on Aaliyah. First he frowned. Then his face froze. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Mrs. Grant opened her mouth to speak, but Aaliyah stepped forward. "I came for help," the girl said. Jonathan Reed stared at her, confused and annoyed. "This is not a shelter," he said coldly. Aaliyah lifted her head. Her voice did not shake. "You said that before," she said. "You said it when it was raining." The phone slipped from his hand. That was when the words came out of her mouth, the words that made him kneel. And just as his knees hit the floor, just as the guards rushed forward, Mrs. Grant clutched her chest and cried out in pain. She collapsed. Aaliyah screamed her name. Everything erupted at once. And no one yet knew that this was only the beginning. Mrs. Grant hit the floor with a dull sound. "Ambulance! Call an ambulance!" someone shouted. The guards rushed forward. Jonathan Reed was still on his knees, staring at Aaliyah like she was a ghost, but the sound of the old woman falling snapped him back to the room. Aaliyah dropped beside Mrs. Grant, her small hands shaking. "Please wake up," she cried. "Please." Mrs. Grant's eyes were half open, but her lips moved without sound. Her breathing was slow and uneven. Jonathan stood up fast. "Now," he barked. "Get medical help here immediately." People moved in every direction. One guard spoke into his radio. Another cleared space around the old woman. The shiny mansion floor no longer looked perfect. It looked cold and dangerous. Aaliyah felt tears burn her eyes. This was her fault. If she had not come here, Mrs. Grant would be safe at home, drinking tea. A man in a dark blue suit knelt beside Mrs. Grant and checked her pulse. "She's alive," he said. "But she needs a hospital." Jonathan Reed looked down at Aaliyah. For a second, his face softened. Then it hardened again like a door slamming shut. "Take her with the paramedics," he said. "Make sure she's cared for." Aaliyah nodded quickly. She held Mrs. Grant's hand as they placed her on a stretcher. The old woman's fingers squeezed hers weakly. "Be brave," Mrs. Grant whispered. "Kindness always finds a way." Then they rolled her away. The hall felt empty after that, even though many people were still there. Jonathan turned to Aaliyah. His voice was low. "Who are you?" he asked. Aaliyah swallowed. "My name is Aaliyah." "Why did you come here?" he asked. She hesitated. She remembered Mrs. Grant's words. She remembered the rain. "Because I didn't know where else to go." Jonathan studied her face. His eyes searched for something, but whatever he was looking for stayed hidden. "Take her to the sitting room," he said to one of the guards. "Get her food. Dry clothes." The guard looked surprised. "Sir." "I said now," Jonathan snapped. Aaliyah followed the guard down a quiet hallway. The sitting room was warm and large, filled with soft chairs and tall bookshelves. A fire burned in the fireplace even though it was not cold outside. A maid brought her soup and bread. Another brought clean clothes. Aaliyah ate slowly. Every bite made her feel a little stronger, but her chest still felt tight with worry. She wondered if Mrs. Grant would be okay. After a while, Jonathan Reed entered the room alone. He sat across from her, not too close, not too far. "You said something before," he said. "Something you should not know." Aaliyah looked into her bowl. "Some things stay with people," she said, "even when they try to forget." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Who told you?" "No one," Aaliyah said. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Children imagine many things." Aaliyah finally looked up at him. "I imagine voices," she said softly. "I imagine a woman crying at a bus stop. I imagine a man driving away because he was afraid." Jonathan stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Enough," he said sharply. Silence fell between them. Minutes passed. Jonathan spoke again, calmer now. "You will stay here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we'll talk to the police again." Aaliyah nodded, but fear crept into her heart. She did not trust promises made in big houses. Later that night, Aaliyah lay in a large bed with white sheets. The room was bigger than Mrs. Grant's whole house. Still, she felt small and alone. She closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. She heard footsteps outside her door. The door opened slowly. Jonathan Reed stood there, holding something in his hand. It was an old photograph. He walked in and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance like he was afraid she might disappear. "Look at this," he said quietly. Aaliyah glanced at the photo. Her heart skipped. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile. She was standing near a bus stop. Rain streaked the ground beneath her feet. Aaliyah's hands trembled. "She used to sing," she whispered before she could stop herself. Jonathan's breath caught. "What song?" he asked. Aaliyah closed her eyes. "A slow one," she said. "About coming home." Jonathan dropped the photo. He stood up and turned away, his shoulders shaking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then a loud noise came from downstairs. Shouting. Running feet. A guard burst into the room. "Sir," he said urgently, "there's a problem. The police are here." Jonathan turned sharply. "Why?" "They say someone reported a missing child," the guard said. "And the description matches her." Aaliyah's heart pounded. Jonathan looked at her, his eyes full of conflict. And downstairs, the sound of handcuffs clicking echoed through the mansion. The night was far from over. The sound of metal clicking filled the mansion hallway. Aaliyah froze in bed. Downstairs, a loud voice spoke with authority. "We need to see the child. Now." Jonathan Reed clenched his fists. For a moment he looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to step forward or turn back. "Stay here," he told Aaliyah firmly. "Do not leave this room." Aaliyah nodded, but her heart raced. She slid off the bed and crept toward the door anyway, her bare feet quiet on the soft carpet. She did not open it, only pressed her ear against the wood. She heard heavy footsteps. "I'm Officer Daniels," a man said. "We received a report of a missing black girl. Age around 11. Seen near this area." Jonathan answered, calm but cold. "This is private property." "And that child is a minor," Officer Daniels replied. "If she's here, we need to make sure she's safe." Safe. The word felt strange to Aaliyah. She hugged herself. Jonathan sighed. "She's been through a lot," he said. "Let me speak to her first." There was a pause. Then another voice, softer but firm. "Sir, the law doesn't wait." Aaliyah heard the footsteps moving closer. Her door opened. 2 police officers stood there. One was Officer Daniels. The other was a woman with kind eyes named Officer Lewis. Aaliyah stepped back slowly. Officer Lewis knelt down to her level. "Hi," she said gently. "We're not here to hurt you." Aaliyah looked past her at Jonathan. He stood stiffly by the wall, his face unreadable. "I didn't steal anything," Aaliyah said quickly. "I just needed help." Officer Lewis nodded. "That's okay. We just need to ask a few questions." They walked her downstairs. The big hall felt different now. Less shiny. Less powerful. Officer Daniels asked her name, her age, where she lived. Some questions were easy. Some were not. "Do you know your parents' names?" he asked. Aaliyah hesitated. Her chest felt tight. "I knew one," she said quietly. Jonathan's head snapped up. Officer Lewis noticed. "You don't have to rush," she said kindly. Before Aaliyah could answer more, a guard hurried in with a phone. He whispered something into Jonathan's ear. Jonathan's face changed. "That was the hospital," he said. "The old woman who came with the child, Mrs. Grant. She's stable. But she's asking for the girl." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. "She's okay." Jonathan nodded slowly. "For now." Officer Daniels crossed his arms. "That's good news. But our job isn't done." Aaliyah felt torn in 2 directions. She wanted to see Mrs. Grant. She also felt pulled toward Jonathan by something she could not explain. After more talking, the officers agreed to leave for the night. "But we'll be back," Officer Daniels warned. "This case is not closed." When the door shut behind them, the mansion fell quiet again. Jonathan leaned against the wall, rubbing his face with both hands. "You shouldn't have said those things," he muttered. Aaliyah looked at him. "I didn't plan to." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if trying to see through her skin and into her memories. "You remind me of someone," he said. Aaliyah shrugged. "People say that sometimes." The next morning, Jonathan arranged for Aaliyah to visit Mrs. Grant in the hospital. The room smelled like medicine and clean sheets. Mrs. Grant smiled weakly when she saw Aaliyah. There you are, she said softly. I was worried. Aaliyah rushed to her side and held her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I caused trouble. Mrs. Grant squeezed her fingers. You caused truth, she said. Truth often feels like trouble at first. Jonathan stood at the foot of the bed, silent. Mrs. Grant looked at him. Her eyes sharpened. You, she said. You look like the man she loved. Jonathan stiffened. You don't know what you're saying. Mrs. Grant smiled sadly. Oh, I do. I used to sit with her. At that bus stop. She cried every day. The room felt too small. Jonathan's breathing grew heavy. That was a long time ago. Mrs. Grant closed her eyes. Time doesn't erase what we abandon. Aaliyah watched them, her heart pounding. Later that day, back at the mansion, Jonathan gave Aaliyah a tour. It was quiet, almost peaceful. She saw rooms full of art, a library bigger than her school, and a garden that smelled like fresh flowers. This place is lonely, Aaliyah said without thinking. Jonathan stopped walking. It wasn't always. They sat in the garden. Birds chirped. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then Jonathan's assistant rushed in, pale and shaking. Sir, he said, we have a problem. Jonathan stood. What now? The media, the assistant said. They found out a missing black child spent the night here. They're outside the gates. Aaliyah's stomach dropped. Sirens wailed in the distance. Voices shouted. Jonathan looked at Aaliyah, fear and anger mixing in his eyes. They will twist this, he said. They always do. The gates rattled as cameras flashed beyond them. And in the noise and chaos, Aaliyah suddenly remembered something she had never said out loud. Something that could change everything. She opened her mouth to speak. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. Just as the front doors burst open, the front doors slammed open. Voices rushed in like a storm. Mr. Reed. Over here. Is the girl inside? Did you hide her? Flashes of light burst across the hall. Cameras clicked again and again. Reporters crowded forward, talking over each other. Jonathan Reed stepped in front of Aaliyah at once, his tall body blocking her from view. This is private property, he said loudly. Get out. Aaliyah's heart beat so fast it hurt. She grabbed the edge of his jacket without thinking. The guards moved in, pushing reporters back. The noise grew louder. Someone shouted something ugly. Someone else laughed. Aaliyah felt small. Smaller than ever before. Jonathan turned slightly and spoke in a low voice. Go upstairs. Now. She wanted to argue. She wanted to stay. But fear pushed her legs forward. She ran up the stairs as fast as she could, her breath short, her eyes burning. In her room, she locked the door and slid down against it. The voices downstairs blurred together. She hugged her knees. She remembered other voices. Mean ones. Cold ones. Voices that said she did not belong anywhere. Tears slipped down her face. After a long time, the noise faded. The mansion went quiet again. Aaliyah did not know how much time passed before there was a soft knock on her door. It's me, Jonathan said. She opened the door slowly. He looked tired. Older than before. His tie was loose, his hair messy. They're gone, he said. For now. Aaliyah nodded. He looked at her for a long moment. You were about to say something earlier, he said. Before the doors opened. Her stomach twisted. She remembered the words that had tried to escape her mouth. I remember something, she said quietly. Jonathan stiffened. About what? About the rain, she said. And the bus stop. His face tightened, but he did not stop her. There was a woman, Aaliyah continued. She held my hand. She said everything would be okay, even though her eyes were wet. Jonathan turned away. Enough. She waited, Aaliyah said, her voice stronger now. She waited all night. She thought you would come back. Jonathan slammed his hand against the wall. Stop, he said. His voice cracked. Aaliyah flinched but did not back away. Why didn't you? She asked. Silence filled the room. Finally Jonathan spoke. Because I was a coward. The word hung heavy between them. He sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped. I was young, he said. I was afraid of losing everything I was building. People told me she would slow me down. Aaliyah listened, her heart pounding. I told myself she would be fine, he went on. I told myself she didn't need me. Aaliyah whispered. She did. Jonathan closed his eyes. That night, Aaliyah dreamed of rain again. But this time the rain stopped. The next morning social workers came. They were kind but serious. They asked questions. They wrote things down. They talked about foster homes and temporary care. Aaliyah felt her chest tighten. Jonathan listened from across the room, his face unreadable. After they left, Aaliyah sat alone by the window. Jonathan approached slowly. You don't have to leave today, he said. Everyone leaves, Aaliyah replied. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he said, I'll make sure you're safe. She did not answer. Later that day, Jonathan received another call from the hospital. Mrs. Grant wanted to see Aaliyah again. When they arrived, Mrs. Grant looked weaker, but her eyes were sharp. You're still here, she said to Aaliyah with a smile. Aaliyah hugged her gently. I didn't go anywhere. Mrs. Grant turned her gaze to Jonathan. Truth doesn't knock once, she said. It keeps knocking. Jonathan nodded slowly. On the way back to the mansion, Aaliyah felt tired. So tired. Her head leaned against the car window. When they arrived, the gates were already open. Jonathan frowned. That's strange. As the car rolled in, a man stepped out of the shadows. He wore a dark coat. His face was hard. Jonathan's driver stopped suddenly. The man smiled thinly. We need to talk, he said. Jonathan's eyes darkened. You shouldn't be here. The man glanced at Aaliyah. She knows, doesn't she? Aaliyah's heart skipped. Jonathan opened the car door and stepped out. Leave her out of this. The man laughed softly. Too late. Before anyone could move, sirens screamed in the distance again. Red and blue lights flashed against the mansion walls. And Aaliyah realized that the secret she carried was no longer safe. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights painted the mansion walls like warning signs. The air felt tight, as if everyone was holding their breath at the same time. Aaliyah stayed frozen in the back seat, her hands clenched in her lap. Jonathan Reed stood outside the car, his body stiff, his eyes locked on the man in the dark coat. You called them, Jonathan said quietly. The man smiled again. I made a suggestion, he replied. The truth has a way of attracting attention. Police cars rolled through the open gates and stopped near the front steps. Officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts. What is going on here? One officer asked. Jonathan turned slowly. This is my property, he said. This man is trespassing. The man in the coat raised his hands. I'm just a concerned citizen, he said smoothly. I know things about this house. About that child. Aaliyah's heart jumped. The officer looked between them. Sir, he said to Jonathan, we need to ask a few questions. Jonathan nodded once. Of course. Aaliyah was asked to step out of the car. Her legs felt weak as she stood on the driveway again. The mansion no longer felt safe. It felt like a stage and everyone was watching her. An officer knelt in front of her. Are you okay? He asked. Aaliyah nodded slowly. Has anyone here hurt you? He continued. She shook her head. Jonathan watched closely, his face tight. The man in the coat stepped forward. You should ask her what she remembers, he said. Ask her about the past. Jonathan snapped. That's enough. The officer raised a hand. Sir, please. Aaliyah felt something rise inside her. Fear mixed with anger. She remembered Mrs. Grant's voice. Truth keeps knocking. I remember, Aaliyah said softly. Everyone turned to her. I remember the rain, she said. I remember waiting. I remember being hungry and cold. Jonathan closed his eyes. The officer listened carefully. Do you remember names? He asked. Aaliyah hesitated. Her heart pounded. Some, she said. The man in the coat smiled wider. See, he said. She remembers everything. Jonathan looked at the man. Why are you doing this? He asked. The man's smile faded. Because I cleaned up your mess, he said. Because I watched you walk away and become rich while others paid the price. Silence fell. The officers exchanged looks. We'll need statements, one said. All of you. They agreed to return in the morning. For now they left, warning everyone not to leave town. As the police cars drove away, the night felt heavier than before. Jonathan turned to Aaliyah. "Come inside," he said gently. Inside the mansion, Aaliyah sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Jonathan poured her a glass of water and set it down carefully. The man in the coat stood near the door, watched by guards. "What do you want?" Jonathan asked him. The man looked around the room. "Justice," he said. "Or maybe peace. I haven't decided." Jonathan's voice was tired. "You won't get either this way." The man shrugged. "Maybe not. But she deserves answers." He glanced at Aaliyah. That night, sleep did not come easily. Aaliyah dreamed of running, of calling out, of hands slipping away. In the morning, she woke to raised voices downstairs. She followed the sound carefully. Jonathan and the man were arguing. "She's just a child," Jonathan said. "She doesn't need this." "She needed you," the man replied. "And you weren't there." Aaliyah stepped into the room. Both men turned. "I need to know," Aaliyah said quietly. Jonathan looked at her, pain filling his eyes. "Some truths hurt," he said. "So does not knowing," Aaliyah replied. Before Jonathan could answer, his assistant rushed in. "Sir," she said urgently, "Mrs. Grant is back at the hospital. Her condition worsened." Aaliyah gasped. "Can we see her?" Jonathan nodded. "Right now." At the hospital, machines beeped softly. Mrs. Grant lay still, her face pale. Aaliyah held her hand. "I'm here," she whispered. Mrs. Grant opened her eyes slowly. She smiled weakly. "Good," she said. "You're brave." Jonathan stood nearby, silent. Mrs. Grant looked at him. "Do not run anymore," she said. "Running only makes the past louder." Tears filled Jonathan's eyes. He nodded. On the way back, Aaliyah felt strange, calm and scared at the same time. When they reached the mansion, the gates were closed. Jonathan frowned. "I didn't order that." The guards looked confused. "We didn't either." Suddenly the lights went out. The mansion plunged into darkness. Aaliyah screamed. Footsteps ran through the halls. A door slammed somewhere. Jonathan shouted, "Stay close to me." Aaliyah grabbed his hand as alarms began to wail. In the darkness, a voice spoke softly. "You can't hide forever." And the power did not come back on. Chapter 6. The alarm screamed through the darkness. Red lights flashed on the walls, then died again. The mansion felt like it was holding its breath. Aaliyah clutched Jonathan's hand tightly. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. "Don't let go," Jonathan said firmly. Footsteps echoed somewhere far down the hall. Guards shouted orders. A door slammed. The voice from the darkness laughed softly, then disappeared. Minutes passed. Then the emergency lights flickered back on, weak but steady. The power slowly returned. The mansion came back to life, but nothing felt the same. Jonathan straightened and turned to the guards. "Lock every entrance," he ordered. "No one in or out." They moved fast. Aaliyah looked around, her chest rising and falling quickly. "Who was that?" she asked. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "A man from my past," he said. "Someone who knows too much." They sat together in the sitting room. The fire was lit again, but it did not bring comfort. Jonathan finally spoke. "I can't keep running," he said quietly. "Not from you. Not from myself." Aaliyah listened. "There was a woman," Jonathan said. "Her name was Naomi. She was kind, strong. She believed in me when I had nothing." Aaliyah's breath caught. "She loved a little girl," he continued, his voice shaking. "A little girl who used to hum songs when she was scared." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. She whispered the song, just a few soft notes. Jonathan covered his mouth. Tears slipped through his fingers. "That song," he said. "She sang it at the bus stop." Silence wrapped around them. Jonathan fell to his knees again, not because of shock this time, but because he could no longer stand under the weight of his choices. "I was afraid," he said. "I chose money over love, power over responsibility." Aaliyah knelt in front of him. "She waited," she said softly, "but she never stopped loving you." Jonathan looked up at her. "And you?" he asked. "What do you feel?" Aaliyah wiped her tears. "I feel tired," she said honestly, "but I also feel hopeful. Morning came quietly. Sunlight filled the mansion, touching corners that had never seen warmth before. The police returned. Social workers came again. This time the talks were longer, deeper, harder. Jonathan did not hide. "I will take responsibility," he said, "for everything." The man in the dark coat was questioned too. His anger softened as the truth stood in the open. At the hospital, Mrs. Grant was awake. When Aaliyah walked in, she smiled. "You found your voice," she said. "And you found us," Aaliyah replied. Mrs. Grant looked at Jonathan. "The hardest step," she said gently, "is turning back." Jonathan nodded. "I'm ready." Weeks later, the mansion no longer felt cold. Aaliyah laughed there now. She read books in the library. She helped water the garden. She still missed Mrs. Grant every day, but she visited her often. People talked. The world watched. But something stronger than noise had taken root: truth and kindness, and the courage to face the past. One evening as the sun set, Aaliyah stood by the gate and looked back at the mansion. She was no longer lost. And Jonathan Reed was no longer running. But their story of healing, of forgiveness, and of choices still to be made, was only just beginning. If you enjoy this story, subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories.